Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share their real-life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best lives. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. I'm excited today. We have somebody that I follow on Instagram. His name is Ben, and he is a runner guy with a sign. Is that it? A runner guy?
That's it. Thanks for following me.
Yeah. I saw you come across my feed one day and I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, doesn't his arms get tired? Isn't the blood like moving down to his feet? Like you hold that sign high and proud. And I'm like, wow. And then I started going through your entire feed and I'm like, oh my gosh, you've traveled into different countries and you carry a sign that says, I believe in you, but you do it in the language of the country you're visiting.
Right.
That's so cool. I don't know anything about you, but I was like, I want this guy on because clearly this guy understands resiliency. So
definitely. Yeah. Glad to be here.
So tell me, Ben, what does resilience mean to you?
Oh, it's everything. You know, I think we're all equally yoked in life, right? We all start out not knowing anything, being completely helpless. We work our way up through childhood. You have people to teach you and to help you, hopefully, and sometimes we don't, but you just kind of figure out life, and everybody does that differently, and things happen, crappy things happen. Life's about learning and overcoming, and so if you're not resilient, if you have a hard time with that, you're just going to have a hard time with life, and so I think it's the most important thing you can work at daily.
So let's talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's the point. Resiliency really isn't necessarily innate. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised. So I love that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You say work at it daily.
So I'd love to know a little bit more about you and kind of your background that maybe takes you to this definition of resilience. And then maybe as we get going, let's talk about, you're clearly looking at helping other people be resilient. Like your sign is for others to see. But tell us a little bit about you and your upbringing and maybe lessons of resilience learned along the way, maybe through childhood or young adulthood. What does that look like?
So when I was about 3.5, I'm living in Australia, born there, 6 other sisters. So there's 7 of us. My parents kept having children until they had a boy.
Just keep going. Wait till he shows up. That's funny.
So learned a lot from, growing up with a bunch of sisters. They, took pictures of me in dresses and things like that. So that was always fun. It's always fun when I bring those out.
Come play Barbies with us.
I had parents passed away in an accident at the age of about 3.5. And
oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
We had family around, right? We had uncles and aunts and grandmother, but based on the situation, we ended up getting actually taken in by supposed, good friends of my parents. I think the mom had gone to school with my mom, nursing school, and
did you all stay together? All of you children?
Yeah. Well,
wow.
So when that happened, my oldest sister was in college.
Okay.
I'm the youngest. And
so you're
we ended up with that family, and right before I turned 4, and they turned out to not be the nicest people in the world. They were abusive physically, and we went through a lot there. And about the age of 10, was able to get out of there. And by that time, so when we moved there, my next 2 oldest sisters, other than the oldest who was already out of the house, moved out pretty quickly because they were older. And then by the time we left there at age 10, it was me and my next 2 oldest sisters. And so we came to Utah because that's where my oldest sister was. We're members of the LDS Church in Australia. So we had a connection there, but she was in Utah, and she got into school out here and gotten married. And so I kind of came out, stayed with, the in-laws, her in-laws. And my sisters came a little bit later, and we were, through LDS Social Services, adopted, taken in by a family at age 10, but, officially adopted a couple years later. But I gained a great, amazing set of angel parents at that time, and also a brother and another sister.
Okay, so I imagine that's got to be you sink or swim, you learn a path of resilience through your life experience, right? Can you tell us, so you're adopted and you're just 10, 12 years old, right? You're younger by the time. You're an older child, but still fairly young.
So, and going through stuff like that, just like going through anything crappy in life, people, respond to it. You can respond to it in 2 ways. You can either go one direction or the other, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're not always, every day we might be going other directions. We might bring ourselves back, but and it affected all of us differently, right? At different ages
Sure.
and different things. But, it wasn't a great time. There's times in my life, going through that and really feeling alone and feeling, because we living with that family, they would keep us from our older sisters would be kind of living around the area and would, hey, can we take you to the beach and things like that. And they would call to find out, and they would never tell us about those calls. They'd shut those calls down. They'd keep us isolated. And you go through all of those things, and at the time they're terrible, and life sucks. And, especially as a young kid, I'm really knowing the difference. I remember my parents a little bit. I have flashes, but being that young, didn't necessarily have anything to compare it to.
Sure.
So kind of relying on my older sisters, and they did. But yeah, going through that, I look back at it now, and I wouldn't want to get rid of that experience, right? I mean, I feel like it was such a benefit to go through that I understand things so much more deeper now and appreciate things on a much, deeper level, that if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have that experience.
Yeah.
And so now I look back at it as just something I treasure, that I have the experience, not that I had to go through it, because no one wants to go through something like that.
I think you've touched on so much. What we talk about a lot with resilience is you don't have to necessarily love the life stressor or circumstance, but you can treasure the lessons and the growth that you've chosen to let come out of those very difficult and even ugly circumstances. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
And the tool of resilience in that lesson is that we get to make the meaning of that. So why not make it a positive lesson? Why not take something
we can put parameters on it?
Why not take something really negative and reframe it to make it a strength for ourselves?
Okay, so before we get into the sign and the fact that you're helping other people be motivated and build resilience, I've got to ask you, have you always been a runner? I am not a runner. And so for people, I don't necessarily run around town, let alone run around the world. So where did running come into your life, and what, I imagine maybe that helps with physical resilience, mental resilience. What's the role of running in your life?
Yeah, it's huge. So no, I wasn't always a runner. I like to play basketball and football and stuff like that, but I'd never run more than a mile, like the mile they make you run at school.
Sure, the mandatory minimum.
And there's times where I, ran it as fast as I could, and I would get a pretty good time, but I hated it, right? And most people that you talk to, they hate running. They don't, what's the point? You just go out and run, and it sucks and it hurts, and I'd rather do 100 other things. So
you're speaking my language.
Back in 2006, we moved out to Eagle Mountain, and I don't know if you're familiar with Eagle Mountain. There's kind of two areas. You have the city center, which is farther out on the other side of Lake Mountain, where Utah Lake is there, and there's a northern kind of other part of it called, the ranches, another part. So we moved out to the city center part, which is kind of out there, an extra 10 minutes, and got to know our neighbors a street over. And I went over to his house one day, and his wife was there and said, "Hey, he's not here. He's out running 18 miles. And I thought, what
crazy guy is that?
Crazy person is out running 18 miles early on a Saturday morning. That's got to be the worst thing in the world. So I thought, it kind of sparked my interest, but in becoming friends with him and talking to him, he's like, "Hey, you gotta run with me." And I thought, I can't run that far. And, and he's like, "No, let's just go on a 2-mile run. I've never run that far before."
You're like, that alone is too much.
I think actually by the time I moved out, I ran a 5K once and thought I was going to die.
Yeah. Super accomplished.
So he got me out there, and halfway through, I'm like, "We've been running for a while. How far have we gone?" He's like, "Oh, it's been 2 miles. We got to turn around and do 2 miles to get back." And so he kind of tricked me, but it turned into I like being competitive, especially, in those kinds of circumstances. So I thought, if he can do that, I can do this. And so he got me running. We ran together. We trained for a half marathon.
How long ago was this?
This was back in 2008.
Oh, a while. Okay. So you've been running for a while.
Yeah, when I ran, I think the half marathon or the first marathon. No, I ran my first marathon in 2008. So this was 2007.
Okay, so this has been a minute. What?
Yeah, definitely. I'm 43 now. I was a lot younger then.
So what role does running play
to get me into it?
Connect running to resilience for us in your life.
Yeah, psychologically, when you get out there and you're consistent at something, and you get past the first few, couple months of being, oh, this sucks, I'm out of shape, I'm not in shape yet. Once you get into running shape, and you do it consistently, there were days I'd come home from running. What's funny is 18 miles, right? I get home from running 18 miles. I clean the entire house, right? I feel like I could do anything. It really helps you, running before work, getting a good run in, feeling good, running with a friend, talking to somebody, about everything and just feeling good. It just helps you feel like you can conquer the world. Because if I ran whatever amount of mileage or whatever this morning, or I ran a good pace or whatever, it makes you feel like you can accomplish pretty much anything that you want to, right?
Yeah.
So it's hugely beneficial for your emotional, spiritual being as well as your physical being.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot, Michelle, with the connection between your mind and your body.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we only take care of the body, or we only want to focus on the emotional, mental, well, health piece without recognizing the connection that the physical running has physical benefits that spill over into the mental, and then vice versa. So tell us about this sign. When was the time you first said, I'm going to carry a sign with me on my run?
So, and I remember this because I wrote it down. It was back in 2019, I think, is the year where I started getting the idea. So
you ran for well over a decade, just running with friends, running by yourself, running marathons, staying in shape. And then this sign idea comes up.
Yeah, it was, I'd run races and I trained for races. I got kind of tired of the regiment of it. Like, hey, if you're going to run this marathon in September, you have to run XYZ, tomorrow and this week and whatever. I kind of got tired of that. So I stopped running races and just ran because I like to run, right? So I moved to like 3 days a week. I'd run however far I wanted to. And that was great. And so I think at that point, right, I'd kind of gotten into running. I'd run all the races. I graduated to the point of, I have a lot of pretty good thoughts. Sometimes you're out running. This could be, you're doing a lot of other things physical, but you get kind of in the zone. You get those endorphins going. You get lots of great ideas or inspiration because you're out by yourself. And I started getting the idea to like, hey, because I'd watch people pass me and I'd see their face and think, man, people are in a hurry. They're in a rush. I remember, like, I've been working from home since 2013, but I remember what it's like to drive into work. I know what it's like to drop off kids at school and be rushing around. And I know that a lot of moms deal with a lot of that and all the things that they deal with every day. And you see that going on. And I just had the thought, like, I could do something, or I should do something to help lift people up. But I didn't know what it was at first, right? Like, what am I going to do? Like, jump out in front of the car and wave my arms?
Yeah. How can I possibly help people I don't know? Yeah.
Right. When I'm running, and because I thought this is the only time some days that I get out and I'm out and about. So I wonder if I can do something. So I had the thought. And then in 2019, I think in the fall, I had the idea like, hey, I should have a sign. So I got home and I was really excited about it. And I wrote it down, which the note I still have, and just kind of said, hey, I'm going to, run with a sign, and I'm going to try and get other people to join me. And if they can't run, we'll just have gatherings on street corners and see if we can get this to become a positive trend. Right. But then, just like I'm sure anybody can relate with, you have an idea and it sounds great to you in your head. And then as you go about your day and life creeps in, whatever, and then the doubts creep in, right? Like, oh, no one's done this, right? No one does this.
It's so funny that we do that to ourselves. Yeah. We start to tell ourselves.
We're the only ones staying inside there. I want to come stand on the street corner with you and hold up a I believe in you sign. I love the idea of that. You started this.
Definitely join me. I'll invite you. But
yeah, I'm not running.
But yeah.
I will cheer you on.
I will stand and cheer, and I will be the most excited person. I've done a lot of that with campaigns. But you started this around the same time we started our podcast, fall of 2019. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, I didn't start it then. This is when I was getting the ideas.
Oh, okay.
So how long? Let's take a break.
It went on for 3 years.
Let's take a break for a minute, and then when we come back, you can tell us how you went from that idea on a quick note paper to, hey, you're making this happen. Okay, Ben, tell us, you've got a piece of paper with an idea. Life happens, gets in your way, doubt creeps in. How do you go from that first concept on the scrap of paper to, hey, I'm going to get my sign and go? Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, but I think the main catalyst was the COVID situation.
Right.
2020, right in March, everything shuts down. We love to travel. I like to go to sporting events. We like to do a lot of those things. So all of those things went away. You had the lockdowns, you have the, the masks and the quarreling over masks and the political things.
Sure. Very divided.
Yeah. And you get family members, arguing over stuff. And we had a family member pass away. And
no. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. It's pretty just, weary time, right? I found myself.
Yeah, just hit from a lot of angles.
Yeah. So that year, 2020 and 2021 just kind of felt after that, like I don't feel inspired whatsoever. I hope they don't ask me to speak in church.
Yeah, I won't be the most motivational.
Yeah, I don't have a thing to say to anybody, and why should anybody be listening to me? And I don't feel like I have anything,
Really?
So I was just I've never felt in my life like, oh, I'm depressed or I deal with depression. But I think if any time in my life, surprisingly, it was that time, because I just, like everything was fine. Job's fine, family's fine, everything's stable. But it was like an emotionally, spiritually weary time.
Yeah.
And I just thought, just one day I was just like, like I need help. I said a prayer. I think, they did ask me to speak in church, and that was
of course they did.
a week or two after I had this thought, like I get asked to speak. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I do not want to do this. But I had a couple weeks to prepare, which I've never had. And I've never put effort into it, like, really preparing. And so I said a prayer, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I just want to feel different. Right. Nothing happened. The next day I went out and ran. It was a running day. And then I got a mile into my run, and then I got hit with like forceful inspiration, right? Like, you've got to do that idea.
Really? So it came back.
Yeah. And I'd have it from time to time, every month or so, but it was like, you've got to do it this time. Like, don't ignore it.
Stop putting it off.
If you do it, you'll have something to talk about. You'll feel better, right? So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it this time. I'm not going to let any thoughts creep in and let it talk me out of it. I'm going to do it. And so I said, I'm going to give myself, 4 or 5 days, and I'll do it next Tuesday. And so I set the date, and I still had the doubts. The night before, I still hadn't made the sign or anything. And I'm sitting there like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. People are going to, what are they going to think? Are my kids going to go to school and get crap about it from them?
Yeah. What's your
friends?
dad
like,
doing?
Oh, your crazy old dad's running around like he's nuts, right? So, but I did it. I got the sign put together the night before. That morning I got up and I had the sign, like I just got to grab it and go out the door, like, and stop worrying about it. But,
and did you just make the sign, like you and a marker and a piece of poster board?
Yeah.
I love it.
I did. I asked my wife for poster board, which she had upstairs in it. She has a craft room. And I took it downstairs, and I did. I took out a marker and I was trying to write it, and thought, man, this isn't going to look very good. I'm not going to do a great job. So I printed out the letters and cut them out and taped them on.
Oh, very nice.
And yeah, that was my sign, my original sign. Eventually I covered it in tape to make it waterproof, but it got pretty beat up and it was pretty ragged.
It's pretty high key. I like it. I mean, high level. I like that.
It went well, right? Like it had all these fears, like, man, I'm so nervous about this.
So you literally just started running with it. You're now running your 18 or however many miles holding a poster. How does that change your run?
Yeah. And did you start holding it like lower? And then at some point, I've seen you, it's over your head. And I'm just like, I don't get it. How do you stay
How do your arms hold on to that? Yeah.
How do you stay balanced?
Yeah,
How do you
great question. I plan to hold it about, my chest, where, if you're running, your arms are kind of moving at that level.
Yeah.
Hold it there, right? It's pretty natural. That's what I plan to do. When I saw the first car, I just felt like holding it up.
Oh, just again, following that instinct.
Yeah, and it felt good. It was like, and they honked and waved, and it was like, that felt good. That was cool. And so just every time I'll run with it chest level, but if there's people that can see me,
then you carry it up.
Coming my direction, right? Then I'll hold it up. Sometimes it gets hard though, because you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, 30, 40 cars in a row.
Yeah. How do your arms do that? And how do your legs keep moving?
It's rough sometimes, especially that first time in the first few months, getting your lungs and your cardio to handle it, because, that extra load.
Yeah.
Right. You get sore in places where you're not used to getting sore because.
Well, yeah. Even though the poster itself isn't super heavy, it's a totally different muscle. Well, then you can't move your arms even if they are chest level. You can't really move them with your stride because you're holding something.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different. And I turn a little bit as people go by sometimes. And so I've had some hip issues, but I eventually got
killing
over all
your
those
poor
things.
body. Where have you been? Where has this poster and these runs taken you?
Oh man, to a whole new place. even after doing it for a couple of weeks, I thought, I haven't really heard a whole lot from people like, hey, I saw you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of still doubting. So I was like, should I keep doing it? What should I do? But I haven't stopped doing it. But I started getting a lot of feedback because people started posting about it in groups on Facebook. And then I started getting people, texting people that I know and or some people even show up at the house. When I'd be running, sometimes people pull over and they get out or, they roll down the window and talk to me. And I started getting all kinds of feedback and I felt like it was important, but I hadn't really, up until that point gotten a lot of validation that like, hey, people appreciate it. But when that started a couple weeks in, it's been nonstop. I have nonstop stories that it might just be a little thing like, hey, it turned my whole day around. Like I was feeling like crap, right? I saw you and it turned my day around. But a lot of them too are, really serious things like, it saved my life. I was going to take my life. And I saw you and it talked me out of that. So it's and all things in between. Yeah, it's not like my life wasn't crappy before. And it hasn't like completely changed my life in a lot of those different ways. But as far as like just feeling, a purpose, feeling inspired, remembering that, there's a lot I can offer to people. There's a lot of positivity and a lot of lessons that I've learned.
If it's only just one person that didn't take their life, like it's worth it.
Look how valuable. No kidding.
And even if you never know about it, but the reality is that the people you probably help the most, you'll probably never hear from.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Just the silent
I totally
changes.
Agree.
Yeah, I feel that on our show. We get feedback and we get people reaching out occasionally on episodes. But I know that even when we don't hear, it's like it's okay because I know that whatever we're producing is meant for somebody.
Yeah.
And I don't have to know who that is. Like, it's okay.
So, Ben, you said you would start to see, I mean, obviously, if someone pulls you over to the road, gives you feedback, or someone texts you because they know your personal phone number, how did you start to connect and grow the presence online, which, of course, can have a much greater reach than just running in your neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. It's about 6 months in. I had been thinking about it. I thought about it right away because I've done a lot of things in social media. I've run like e-commerce stores and things like that. I know how to market things, but I didn't want it to be that. I didn't want it to be a job. I didn't want it to be something I made money at. I didn't want it to be something that became a chore. I wanted it to be purely, just doing good. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't want to promote it on social media at first because I thought I don't want people to see me promoting myself thinking, oh, he's into himself. He's just doing this to get attention or, some kind of benefit behind the scenes where he's, working with some deal that eventually he'll make money or whatever, right? Like I didn't want people to think that because I thought that would ruin it. But eventually realized that, what, I've got to take it to social media and promote it to spread my message. Like you said, I can only run so many places. Like people around Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs know me pretty well. They may not be able to recognize me on the street, but like, if they heard, oh, you're the guy with the sign. Yeah, I've seen you or I know you. Like pretty much everybody knows about it. But that's only, tiny bit of Utah, which is a tiny bit of the country, tiny bit of the world. I realize how important the message is and I want it to go everywhere. I want everybody to see me or see someone like me or, benefit from somebody doing something nice because the butterfly effect of that is enormous. So
absolutely.
I started, I'd never been on Instagram really. I had an Instagram account that I never used. I would post to Facebook, I could go on vacation and I have sisters on there and just, kind of post like, hey, this is fun. We did this. The kids are doing this, whatever. But I started an Instagram account, started a TikTok account, YouTube, a bunch of different things, just trying to get, I don't really care if I get 1 billion subscribers or views or whatever, but I just want my message out on the platform and I'll do my best to spread it. But, like you were saying, if just one person sees the video that speaks to them and it benefits them, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
So I started really pushing those things and Instagram, I think right now is, the thing I've focused on the most, but, I realized that at one point I had to do that to spread it the way I want to spread it. Otherwise it's just not going to get outside of this area.
Yeah. That's so amazing. I have been following you. So I also know, and I reached out to you, I don't know, a couple months ago. We didn't connect and we didn't we weren't able to make it happen back then. But I have since noticed, unless I'm seeing an older post, that you had an injury.
Yeah, I did.
Another
I
opportunity.
don't have those often. That was frustrating.
Yeah.
That's definitely something we're talking resilience we can talk about because.
Right. I was thinking about that when I saw this. I'm like, oh, that's so crazy. He got injured right after I reached out to him. Like, what?
Yeah, it was about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. So what happened?
Yeah. I went for a run. Sometimes on Saturday, I like to go out to different areas, like different cities. So I thought, I'd never run up in Salt Lake. I'll start about, downtown conference center area, and I'll just run up to the U where I went to school for a year up there. So I knew the area, and then I'll run back, back down. And so I did that, and it's a lot of hills. And on the way back down, I felt like I pulled my Achilles a little bit, strained it, but it was just kind of minor. And then it's like, I just kept going. I'm like, I got to finish this. Otherwise I got to walk back to my car for 2.5 miles. So I'll just take it a little bit easier. But by the time I got back to the conference center where my car was parked there, it was, I was limping. And then thought, okay, I've done this before. I've strained my Achilles before. I'm off of it for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, right? Ice it. It hurts, but I get back to it and then it goes away. So, but luckily my wife said, hey, you should go to the doctor, which I don't very often. I said, that's a good idea. Let me go to the foot doctor. And then they x-rayed and looked at it and said, oh, you have a bone spur on that foot. So, part of it might have chipped off, might have aggravated it. And, minimum, you're going to be off of this for 6 weeks. Can't run for 6 weeks. And I thought, that sucks. That's terrible.
Man.
But they said, it could be worse.
How often, when your feet are healthy, how often are you running? Like how many run days in a week?
I run 3 times a week. I run like Tuesday.
So 6 weeks is like Thursday, 20 Saturday. Runs. I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah, and usually I'll run like 5-6 miles, sometimes longer. But my shortest, I'll run like 5 or 6.
Oh, wow. So what was that like, getting the news that you're down and off of it for such a long time?
I thought, being in the situation that I was in, right? Like, oh, this motivational, inspirational guy that's gone through all these things should be no problem, right?
Yeah. I'm laughing at you only because I'm like,
Yeah, I get it.
Like all the trauma and the hard things in my life have prepared me for anything. No.
Yeah.
Or some people could look and be like, well, it comes easy for you or whatever. It doesn't. It doesn't come easy for anybody. It really doesn't.
No,
it's so true.
You take away something so important to you, you can't do it anymore. And it's kind of just out of nowhere. It's hard. I have all these plans. I wanted, the gatherings that I talked about in the corners. And I did one last year. And I've been getting together, trying to get other runners, and we have a group of people that want to run with me. And I thought, okay, well, I can't run. So I'm going to make a lot of progress on all these other things, right? I'm going to put together these events. I felt so demotivated. Like, I still was posting to Instagram and things like that as much as I could, but I was just at the end of every day, I felt so empty and like demotivated. Like I can't do what I love. And I know what I love to do, like benefits a lot of people. It benefits me a lot. I get a lot out of it, but there's a lot of people it benefits as well. And I can't get out and do that. And I went out and would walk around with the sign a bit or, sit somewhere or stuff like that. But I just felt like at a loss, right? Like I'm not dealing with this. I'm dealing with it okay, but like this sucks. I didn't think it would affect me this much knowing what I know now, but it did. It was definitely hard. Now it ended up not being super serious. And so it was only 6 weeks and I started running again last week.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah. I'm back at it. Now I'm out of running shape though.
Right. Because that's a lot of runs to miss. Of course
I'm building it back up.
Well, I think that this is amazing and I have some contacts, but you know what I think you should do is reach out to some media and get some media coverage on this when you have your first corner event with people with signs, because I think it's such a great message. And it's like, everybody could do this. I mean, runners could do it or family members could do it. They could take their kids out on the corner of the street instead of political campaigning signs. It could be like, hey, we believe in you, or stay strong, or
just
whatever,
motivational
right?
things.
Like, what if we just change the world through motivational sayings of people taking a little bit of time out of their day And doing something positive rather than, having just the negativity of the world beat us down. I love it.
I appreciate that advice as well, because I've been wanting to do it and wanting to do whatever, but I think my main problem is, like, I hate it's the same reason why I didn't start social media right away, right? Like self-promotion.
Yeah.
I probably need somebody to just beat me
I'll
over
do
the
it.
head and be
Michelle,
like, let me promote it. I'm going to promote it for you.
I'm going to promote it for you. I'm going to reach out to my contacts at KSL and wherever else. And we've got to get you some coverage, because I love your message. I literally came across it scrolling through just random feed. I was bored one night and I saw your sign and it said, "I believe in you." And I thought, oh, that's cool. I wonder what this guy is doing. I wonder what this is about. And I started to read, and then I went to your site and went through all of them. You have done this in other countries, though. You have done this on vacation.
That can be a scary thing, because you don't know with cultural differences what's going to happen. So we all know Americans are, can do funny things and can be loud and, in your face or whatever, right? And it's fine.
Yeah.
But if you go, so I've done this in France, I've done it in Spain now. And you just wonder, like, if they see this guy running around, how are they going to react?
Right. So,
and you're in a place like Paris or, Madrid or somewhere, like, I don't know anything about
the culture,
the area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the culture a bit, but you just don't, like, how are people going to react? Like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm in a really, populated place. So those days where I went out in those mornings, like, I still get nervous sometimes when I do things from time to time or speak or whatever, but going out and running in a new place in a new country, I get pretty nervous. But it turned out that, you know what, it's been the same so far. I'm sure there's countries out there I'll get to eventually where I might run into that cultural barrier, but
yeah.
I'm going to Japan in the fall.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I know that they're much more concerned about, not making waves and not, standing out and things like that. So we'll see how it goes there. But
yeah. I think it's so incredible. We need to take a quick break and we'll be right back and wrap up our conversation with you. But I love what you're doing. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Ben, do you have any specific story of a person that you've inspired through your running?
I have about 100 million.
Good. Let's share a few.
And I love them all.
Highlights today.
My little treasures.
I'm sure that they are. If you feel comfortable sharing just one story with us of someone that you've touched, that you feel that you can share their story, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So actually, I've been trying to convince people to do what I do. Now, my goal in convincing people to do good, I want them to do good things, right? Not everybody can run with a sign, or not everybody, wants to, or whatever it is. It could be whatever your unique way of doing it is. I want to inspire you to do that. But I get, extra joy out of it when it's someone that wants to run with the sign, because I know how hard it is. So I think it was last June, a guy, his name is Chris, and he lives out in city center. He had seen me running with my sign, and he'd been going through, I think he'd had COVID 4 times, and he used to run, and he's just having a hard time physically and emotionally, and work is kicking his butt. And he saw me, and so he posted on a group. It's not a city sponsored group, but it's, like a city group where a lot of us live here in, and just, talking about that. And I responded to him and said, hey, I'm excited, hearing about other runners that have seen me. Do you want to run with me? I'll come run with you. And he said, yeah. So I did. And I made him a sign, gave it to him. And he has been doing that ever since. He's been running with the sign since that. So about a year now.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you could probably tell it better, but, when he talks to me or shares it with other people about how it's completely changed his outlook on life, it's given him his why, right? His reason, to to go out there and sacrifice and have some pain and some inconvenience to let people know that he believes in them as well. It's completely changed his life as well. So I get a lot of kick out of that. I think the most impactful story though I can share really quickly is one of the people that pulled over on the road. Usually the people that pull over on the road are touched very deeply and so much that they want to tell me right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at first I thought it was kind of scary that somebody pulls over, and then I'm thinking, okay, it's probably like a police officer, right? Like when you walking up to a car, like what are their intentions? I don't know who this person is. I don't know what's going on, but every time it's been great. But I was down in Lehigh running. Somebody pulled over ahead of me and could tell they wanted to talk, and got closer, and a guy was in tears, and I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, I saw you. It's affected me deeply, and I'd met with my therapist yesterday, and I just kind of given up. I decided I was going to end my life.
Oh,
and
wow.
was driving around, thinking it through, and pretty much when he was feeling his absolute lowest is when he saw me, and that affected him so much that he's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to battle. He's dealing with with really bad physical issues and things like that, but he's like, I'm going to battle through that, and is still battling through that now. And I think that was the first time I had heard that kind of story, right?
Yeah.
So I had a couple miles left. It was a long run, but I kind of lost it. I was running away from there, just kind of, I was overwhelmed that somebody would be affected by it that much, right? It's the first time I had heard that, and I had a hard time finishing the run. I try to keep at least a non-grimacing face on, or smile. I try to smile sometimes. Sometimes it's hard, but
At least
it's hard to do that when you have like tears streaming down your face, right?
Yeah.
Like,
now you've been impacted by the person you impacted.
You're a mess.
Yeah.
So,
but that vulnerability can create some beautiful shared space.
Yeah, definitely. And being a guy too, right? You're just like, well,
I'm the tough one.
I don't want to necessarily show my emotions, but that touched me so deeply that I knew that there's no way, like, no matter what happens, I've got to keep doing this, period. I'm not going to use injury or whatever as an excuse. I'm going to keep pushing this no matter what.
I love that. Really, your purpose, your mission is quite similar to ours. We started this podcast because I had stories to share that I had heard from people while in politics, and they were hard stories, big traumas, big life hurts. And I just thought, they carried me through losing my spouse. And I thought, I just don't feel like we all understand that we're all struggling. It's everybody. Yeah. I'm not alone in this.
Right.
I'm alone in what I'm currently in, but I am not alone in humanity, that we are all dealing with so many hard things. And so the purpose was to share the stories in order to let people know everybody's struggling. We don't have any idea what other people are struggling with.
Right.
So maybe give a little bit more room on the road. Maybe be a little kinder in the grocery store. Maybe, just give a little bit more room and space for others. And I love that, because you're creating the message that is an opportunity as somebody is driving down the road and maybe thinking of pulling on into an oncoming car. Maybe I don't want to do this.
Right.
Maybe somebody else out there believes in me. Maybe the world isn't dark and gloomy as I think it is.
That glimmer of hope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Ben, I'm curious about your wife and kids. Do any of them run with you? Do you ever have them standing at the corner with the signs? Do they think you're absolutely crazy? Like, what's the family dynamic of this? This is a bunch of your time if you're taking multi-mile runs 3 or 4 times a week, and then kind of the social media presence. What's your family's take on it?
Yeah, that's funny. I don't think anybody's asked me that so far. My wife's very supportive. She's not a runner. But she's great. Recently, just maybe for my birthday, she made me a version of my sign that's a really cool, weather resistant material that I can roll up and I can bring on
You've
trips.
Moved up from the poster board with packing tape.
Yeah, because I bring the poster board sign. I have to roll it up. It gets kind of ruined when I take it on trips and things like that. Yeah. So now I have a version I can do that. But super supportive. I always extend the invitation to my kids, like, hey, come run with me, right? But most of them now are teenagers. And you have the worrying probably of like, how am I going to look, right? I don't like running, all those things. My youngest though, she's 8 and she wanted to make a sign and she's gone out. So I've gone out with her. When I was injured, I went out with her and walked around with our signs together. She'll go out at night, kind of evening, and hey, I'm going to take my sign around, with a friend, and she'll go around the neighborhood block, or she'll go to people's doors and knock on the door. So, being a young kid, you don't have those reservations like you have when you get older. So it's like, I'm just going to do it,
Yeah, that boldness. I love it.
I love it. That is,
I think we have a lot to learn from
family environment. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so they're all supportive. It's fun. They tell me, my friends. Was my son telling me, he's like, hey, we're talking about colleges, and someone's like, oh, there's Weber State. I'm like, oh, I'm at Weber State. Oh, it's crappy school, whatever. And then my son's like, well, my dad went to Weber State, and he's like, oh, your dad's cool. Weber State's cool.
Whoa, you redeemed the university. Good job.
When my daughter went to school, they were doing like a motto, like how to rebrand, and she applied, and her thing was, it's just Weber.
Oh, it's just Weber.
Yeah. But then there was like positive takes onto it. But anyway, it was funny.
Well, this has been great, and I love seeing so many connections today. You've connected your own childhood and personal experiences to wanting to help people around you. You're connecting the physical aspects of running with the emotional and mental benefits of, just the physical rush that it can give you, and help you kind of have that frame of mind where if you can run 20 miles, you can definitely get the dishes done today. So I love that. But I appreciate you being willing to share hope. And I think that's a huge piece of resilience. Yeah. If you can't see something in the future, if you can't be hopeful about something positive ahead of you, then that resilience is just dead. And a huge piece, but I think it works conversely too. If you can just hope, if all you can do is hope for something, that can be the spark that can build resilience. You can hope that maybe tomorrow will be better than today. Hope that your sign might bless somebody along the road, or hope that maybe your kids are learning something from your dedication and your determination. I think hope and resilience are just so interwoven. And I think that's what your sign is. It's a physical demonstration of hope. And you're not just advertising hope, you're sharing hope. You're giving hope. And I love that so much. So thank you for what you do and the people you continue to impact. And I'm with Michelle. Let's see this grow and expand, and it'd be fun to stand at a corner with some of those posters and cheer people on as they're just facing life.
Yeah. And it's a blast too.
That's a lot of fun. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining in and hearing Ben's story. And hopefully you've been motivated. Who knows? Maybe some of you listening will start running marathons. But even if you're still not a runner, maybe today could be the day you find a way to share hope, where you take the tools of resilience you've learned and offer some of that positivity to a perfect stranger or someone else in your life. So thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll continue to join us each week on these episodes. Go find us and like us on your favorite podcast platform. Give us a rating and a review. It helps us make this show better, and it helps other people find the show in the first place.
And remember, whatever you do today, remember to be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their life. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody. Thank you, Ben.